Hello, everyone. I am Nat Poor, and welcome to this ICA Blue Sky session in a slightly different format in game studies, looking at how to situate yourself in academic gaming research, journals and conferences, and how they work. We have an awesome original lineup of people. I'm not sure which ones are actually going to be joining us today as you watch this, but most of them will be. So let's get it started. Come on, screen share. There we go. So obviously, this is not the format we thought it was going to be in. We're doing the virtual conference. Face-to-face is a great thing. It's what we evolved to do, but we don't have it, and we're not in Australia. So the format we're going to use today is a video chain. I'm going to make something hopefully interesting, and we'll pass it off to the next person, who will then pass it off to the next person. So we were going to look at all the research we do in gaming and all the journals and conferences we have, because there are so many of them, and help people understand how they can situate themselves and situate their work within the field. And within the field, of course, being within the journals and conferences. Where does your work fit? Where might you want to think about trying to form connections? Of course, that works best face-to-face, and we don't have that, so that's kind of out the window, but we'll stick with it. We thought about having something kind of fun to watch and something provocative a little bit, which might be more fun to watch. So I was thinking my provocative idea is the field so big that we are becoming splintered? Or who is even we? Is there one we? Are there lots of we's? And we're not talking Nintendo here. Is this a good thing? Hey, embarrassment of riches, hooray. Such a diverse, wonderful field with so much knowledge generation going on. Or is it splintered, but that's okay? Maybe it is. Maybe there are weak connections between different parts of the field. And I hope that this slide is impossible to read slightly, because that's kind of the point. This is a list of conferences from the proposal we had for this session. And it's kind of a big list, and it's definitely not even exhaustive. And I'll talk a little bit about some of the conferences that I know. So second one there is Kai. I know a bunch of people that go to Kai. I've been once. It's not one of my main conferences, but when I was there were people that had made video games. They had built and coded video games, and you could demo them out on the expo hall floor. We don't have ICA at a exposition hotel. We don't tend to have working demos of video games. So that was totally cool and crazy. There's also FDG, which I went to last summer. Actually traveled on an airplane and stayed in a hotel. It was so great. And that was the first time I'd been to FDG, and it was actually really fun. There were digital humanities scholars, there were social scientists such as myself, and there were people actually talking about how to optimize their code. They had code examples as part of the presentation. This wasn't just discussing algorithms like we might do at ICA, but like, hey, here's some code for, say, searching or for generating a world on the fly. Here's how you can optimize your code. That was totally cool. Not what we usually do, so a little bit different. There's HICS, the Hawaii International Conference on System Sciences, that I've been involved with, and one of our next speakers, Mia, has also been involved with that. We run a little gaming track there. It's super awesome. A lot of the work we've gotten is psychology and also Twitch. Mia, you do Twitch, talk about Twitch. And although it does relate to what we do at ICA, there's just a little bit more of a business flavor to that conference, but it is social science work, which is cool. Hopefully it'll actually happen next January, who knows? A little bit further down, Penny Arcade Expo. I was just at PAX East right at the, I don't know, end of January before this whole thing hit. Sony had pulled out. There was a lot of hand washing, and there are small presentations that go on in the side rooms. And I ran into and went to see some of my academic friends. I don't actually remember what they were talking about, because a lot has happened since then, hasn't it? Yes. But these are a bunch of very different conferences where game work happens, and can we always talk across them? Should we have some people trying to expand them? And what do we need to cite? Yeah, this is my provocation. It's a big, beautiful field, and it is a bit messy. And like, is it one thing? Should we try to make it one thing? I don't know. With that, let me see if I can figure out how to turn this darn thing off and hand it off to Mia.
Hello, thank you, Nat. I am Mia, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what game studies researchers can offer to the world outside of game studies. And I think Nat covered pretty well some of the journals and spaces we have available in game studies and raised a few provocations, which we can talk about in chat. So I thought I'd go in a different direction and mention a few areas I think our research is actually valuable right now for people outside of game studies, where we can offer our own expertise, either with research that we've already done, research we know about, or things we might be working on now. And there are 4 areas, and I'm not going to show you my terrible PowerPoint slides because I can't quite share them. So I will hold up fingers. Number 1, research on avatars. We have a lot of research on avatars and how people relate to them, how they think about them as tools or pets. Sometimes people think about them as wished for versions of themselves or better versions of themselves. Sometimes they experiment with their sense of self and their avatars. But we have a lot of research, not just like our sense of ourselves, but also, how we think our avatars should look and feel, how we place them in virtual spaces. And this is all going to be really important as the months go on and we are socially distanced from each other, because we are using virtual spaces more and more outside of games, even just to relate to each other. And so what we know about avatars, I think, is something incredibly valuable we can share with other people. Number 2, virtual worlds and spaces themselves. So, there used to be the saying that, virtual worlds are placeless spaces, unbounded by constraints and reality. And as it turns out, we really like reality. We're missing reality right now. And, the things that we've learned about virtual spaces and how people react to them, the kinds of things that they like to do or don't like to do, what kind of spaces we build that people really seem to find intriguing or exciting versus those that haven't taken hold, multiple places where, just unrelenting PvP with no moderation, is seen as an incredibly toxic space. Who knew? But these are the spaces where we're the experts, and I think we can share our knowledge. Number 3, systems and rules. So related to those spaces, obviously games have rules that are built in, and players really enjoy learning through simulations and systems, like how things work. And they will play around and get a sense and try and break those rules to see like what are the bounds, what's rewarded and what's not. And you can see like how that could work as we have different restrictions on our movement, on daily activities. How are people, because we're not all alike, we don't all follow the same set of rules, we don't have the same beliefs and ideas, how are people going to be reacting to these spaces, maybe pushing against it? What are the things we know about simulations, and like what are the things that could be abstracted out and what should remain to help guide things moving forward. And then 4th, different hand here, the importance of play. We need more play in our lives right now, and this is true for a few reasons. Number 1, we need leisure, we need escape, we need relaxation, we need fun. But also play gives us some important things. Through play, we get a sense of accomplishment, we get agency, and let's face it, right now, it doesn't really feel like there's a lot of agency in our lives. Even sometimes, I might accomplish a few things in a day, but it honestly can feel like I've accomplished more in a game. And so, the importance of play is something I think we should be stressing as well. And those are my provocations, and I will pass it along to the next person.
Hi everyone, I'm Robby Ratan, and this is Vivian Chen, and we are going to follow up on Nat's video here. We're doing our video together. We were supposed to make separate, but we realized that our main goal, that's Fibonacci, our main goal is to really contribute a resource. So instead of making slides, we are going to have a document that we present here. Oh, there's my punchline. And hopefully you guys can contribute to it as well. Vivian, you want to say anything?
Yeah, hi everyone. Because Robby and I are physically in Singapore for some reason, then we decided to do the video together, but also separately. So we thought this might be helpful for people. So we have put together a whole list of journals that game-related research can be published into. And then we've basically categorized them into 3 big loose categories. And the whole purpose of this list was to actually start a discussion. And so anybody who has any insights about this particular journal and the way or the kind of publications they look for, feel free to contribute either in the comments or contribute to this document as well.
Yeah, actually, so for sure contribute in the comments if you can, but it would be even better if you go to bit.ly/game research venues, and that link will give you comment access. You can also suggest changes. We just don't want a bunch of Google Doc bombers, trolls, because you know everyone's going to be dying to mess with our Google Doc. So here we've set it up into 3 sections of journals. We've got game-focused journals, which are game and communication focused. Then we have communication-focused journals that are not really game-focused, and we haven't really messed around with the order too much, but we'd love to have this ordered in perceived games friendliness. And then we have
so let me just add this list for communication focused journals are largely by the impact factors. So then, as you can see, the top ones have more impact factors, which also means that the reviewing time tend to be longer and it's tougher to get in.
But are we going to try to change it to perceived games friendliness, or?
I mean, I would think that this is where everybody else can jump in as well. In my opinion, most of them would be okay in accepting game-related type of research, except for Journal of Communication. In my opinion, sometimes it's largely depending on who are on the editorial board.
Yeah. Maybe we say this. It would be great to add little notes to this document too. I don't know exactly how to make that simple. Maybe we should make it a spreadsheet. Feel free to vote.
So I'm also thinking if this list looks okay to people, who could also start separately Excel sheet and mention, like, here's the impact factor, here are the type of topics that they might be, happy to take in. Because some of the journals are more topical oriented, and some are more sort of general, but it's very quality kind of oriented in terms of their criteria. For instance, Computers and Education, it's a very good journal, but I think the way that for any game scholars want to publish into this, you have to make game relevant to education, to children. So people whose research area focuses on children and media, this would be a good place to go, for instance.
Absolutely. Similar for some of these other education journals. Obviously it's got to focus on education, it's got to focus on science for this one. And we don't want to belabor this video with us discussing too many of these details, but I don't know, do a couple stand out for you, Vivian, as particularly like where games and culture, it was like the top journal for a while, then it had a bit of a low. Now it's been doing pretty well, I think, right?
Yeah, it's indexed, and plus this one is qualitative research friendly, because a lot of the communication focused journals tend to be geared towards quantitative results and studies. There are fewer journals that are friendly to qualitative methodology. This is one of them. Yeah.
I'll note Journal of Serious Games is currently the top impact factored journal, though it's part of a suite JMIR of medical journals. So I think they want to focus on, but they're not only medically focused, they are interested in other aspects of serious games. Is Game Studies rated yet? I don't think so. Last time I checked.
I don't think so. Yeah.
So we actually don't have, I feel like we don't have many journals in our field that are just games focused, right?
I don't think we have any.
Yeah.
Most of the journals in our field are very communication focused. Mm-hmm. So for instance, in the second category here, all of them would require some type of a communication theory and the kind of methodology that we are all familiar with. The only difference would be, for instance, new media and society would be a little bit more friendly towards qualitative research. And the topic can be slightly wider. Media psychology, on the other hand, it's really more focused on quantitative results and the psychological factors.
Yeah. And we've also put Nat's list of conferences here. I think it's a great list, and in many ways you might prefer to go to a conference for some of your papers, especially if you're sending to SIGCHI, or is Chi Play on here? No, it should be on here. Chi Play.
Oh yeah, Chi Play, right.
Or if you're
yeah,
building,
so all these sort of indexed conferences, conference proceedings are considered as a publication. And I think the major difference between these conference proceedings and journals is that the publication timeline is a lot faster than journals, and you also actually attract more audiences than journals. That translates to you get citations faster if you publish into those proceedings rather than journals.
yeah. All right, let's not run this too long, but we do look forward to this document growing. Let us know if you'd prefer a spreadsheet, what types of information we should add for each of these besides impact factor, maybe qual and quant friendliness. That's a good point that Vivian made for a few of these. What else? I don't know, like how many papers they publish a year. Would that be useful to know to see if it will take a long
probably.
time?
I mean, if we try to grow this list, I think it would be helpful to see in each, for instance, in the past 10 years or so, how many game-related topic, the type of articles are published, the kind of methodology they use. Then it'll give sort of an idea about how that journal is thinking of game research.
All right. Well, thanks everyone. Thanks, Vivian.
Thank you, everyone. Hope to see your comments.
Yeah, and I hope you enjoyed the lo-fi hip-hop beats to chill study too as well.
Bye.
Bye.
Hello, my name is Dr. Nick Bowman. I'm an associate professor in the College of Media and Communication at Texas Tech University and a former chair of ICA Game Studies. And along with Nat Poor and Mia Consalvo and Robby Ratan and Vivian Chen, I've been asked to speak a little bit about some of the complications and opportunities associated with situating your scholarship within the larger realm of game studies literature. Now, most of my colleagues have already covered some specifics. So, for example, Nat Poor talked about conferences, and Robby and Vivian talked a bit about some of the many different journals, and they've already provided some resources for that. And Mia Consalvo has talked about ways in which you might be able to answer some emerging questions in game studies. So I thought I might offer a few more tips at the very top level to think about as you emerge through and grow your game studies research. Understand that as a blue sky, this is really meant to be more of a dialogue than it is to be a prescriptive lecture. So please interact with our videos, make comments, post. You can message us directly. My Twitter information is here, as is ICA Game Studies. A big one is focus. I think where a lot of game studies papers tend to get confused or have a hard time finding a home is that oftentimes it's difficult to tell if the manuscript is about games as texts or gamers as people or the processes of gameplay. And I might suggest that the different focus of those papers is going to have a very different audience and likely different implications for where you're going to publish your work and where your work might apply, for example, for grant funding or for public service type works. So make sure the focus of your manuscript is very clear from the start. We know you're studying something about a video game, but to make sure we know if it's about the text, the people, or the processes. 2 points about venues. One of those is going to be reach out to journals. I've been an editor myself a couple of times now, and I've always liked it when people have emailed the journal to ask a very quick question about fit. Sometimes it's easier for me to read an abstract and give some early feedback to a scholar as to whether or not our journal would accept this work. The worst case scenario is a journal may not respond to you, and the best case scenario is you might get to know the editor's focus a little well. Keeping in mind that journal titles don't often mean as much as the editor's focus or the editorial board's focus for that journal. And even going through previous publications may not give you a lot of insight because editors may roll over after a couple of years. Another point about venues is don't concern yourself too much. if the word games is focal to the event or the publication. In fact, up on the screen right now, you're going to see the Technology, Mind, and Society Conference, sponsored by the American Psychological Association. If you simply read that, you may not see anything about games. And yet, if you submit to that conference, which I've done a couple of years now, there's a very rich group of practitioners and psychologists and designers all looking at the processes of games, as well as gamers, and even some of the games as texts. In terms of research practices and scholarship practices, I would urge you very strongly to consider sharing your study materials and your study data even. A lot of us who do gaming work have really complicated and interesting stimulus materials or experimental designs or code books for how we understand how to quantify and qualify an interactive text. Sharing that material in your publications and your presentations goes a really long way in helping readers understand the sophistication involved in a lot of game studies scholarship. And finally, and Mia talked about this as well, think about the zeitgeist. Gaming is mundane, and at the same time, that's what makes it increasingly central to our lived experiences. So you really want to think long and you want to think deep about where games are mattering in all spaces of our lived experiences. So the QR code on screen is going to take you to the text of our blue sky, which might contextualize a lot of our own experiences. The same with the bit.ly link. Let's keep this conversation going. I've got to run like Sonic, and I'll see you online.